A little bit about Tom's background. Again, for those who watch England Sevens, you'll be very familiar with his face. He has some really amazing experience. So he's the England captain, is no stranger to guiding teams to success. He led Great Britain to an Olympic silver medal at Rio 2016, a bronze at the Commonwealth Games in Australia, and silver at the World Cup Sevens in San Francisco. He's shown at student level, helping Oxford to beat Cambridge in the 2011 varsity match, and he led the Great Britain students side to the World Universities title in Brive in July 2012. He obtained a BA in English and Philosophy at Bristol University before going on to study at Oxford. And unfortunately, a lengthy injury layoff saw him miss the start of the 2019-20 season, but he returned in Hamilton and has scored 56 points in this World Series campaign to date. So welcome, Tom. I think hopefully you can hear us now.
I can. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us.
That's a pleasure. I was just enjoying listening to your chat with Mo already, so we're off to a good start.
Oh, very good. And where are you joining us from?
I'm actually down in Winchester at the moment, at my mother-in-law's house.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, we've just got back from a nice, wet and windy dog walk. So, yeah, nice to be back in the dry.
Not quite Sevens weather, is it?
Well, do you know what? You'd be surprised how often you end up getting the rain in places, even though it's billed as being this kind of sunny sport, which you know. But yeah, it's amazing how often we seem to be playing in monsoon rains around the world, whether that's Hong Kong or even Dubai. It's a strange coincidence.
Well, I mean, let's get straight into it because we've only got 20 minutes and so many questions to ask you. I mean, one of the things that I'm sure people would be interested in is how have you transitioned to a full-time professional Sevens athlete with all these awesome experiences, like you mentioned, of traveling around the world?
Well, I guess my journey is I'm part of quite a small group of players that have only really ever done Sevens as a profession. So I've never played professional 15s rugby. I came into the Sevens program straight from university, and so all I've ever known in the professional game is Sevens. Growing up through school, through university, I played 15s and Sevens, like a lot of players do. And then I always played some invitational Sevens for a couple of different teams back kind of when I was at uni and then transitioning out of uni. So that was kind of my route into it. And we've got a few guys actually in the men's Sevens team who went that route, who kind of came straight from uni into the professional Sevens setup.
No, that's brilliant. And we mentioned that you had this injury earlier in the season. How is it doing now? And how have you kind of recovered?
Yeah, it's all right. It was a bit of an annoying one. I was kind of carrying it for my shoulder, and I was carrying it for most of last season anyway, and kind of playing with it. And then had to keep going kind of through the because we had the Olympic qualifier last summer, so a pretty big tournament was on the line, which I didn't want to miss. So managed to kind of keep it going through that, and then had it fixed up by the surgeon last summer. And it was quite a slow recovery, to be honest. But I think the physios were keen to be cautious with me at my age. It's good to make sure you fix these things up right before you come back playing. And it was great. I tell you, I absolutely, after a long layoff, it's amazing how excited you can get again to play the game. Even though I've been playing for years, I was buzzing to get back to some tournaments at the start of this year, and was kind of just getting into the groove again before things obviously shut down.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I guess there's some similarity between sort of taking that break for yourself, because I guess normally you might be playing, you know, from season to season, you get very little time off. I guess there's some similarity with this lockdown period where you've got this break. Was there anything you learned from your time away whilst you were injured that you've now applied, or that you know, can give us tips on how to apply if you're a player and staying fit, staying motivated?
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I mean, I've had a few injuries over the time, and what it's taught me mainly is taking it in very small chunks. So rather than for players now, they might be kind of out of the game for 3, 4, 5 months, maybe longer, whatever it is. And rather than looking a long way ahead, obviously you've got your goals in the future, that's fine, but you kind of need to chunk up the time. So with rehab, that meant, you know, maybe it's a 2-week goal. In 2 weeks, I want to be able to walk without my crutches or whatever. And then it might be, I want to be able to squat with the bar. And you kind of have these little goals. And then every time you get one of these little goals, you kind of pat yourself on the back. And so that might be how people deal with this time, whether that's with training or, you know, achieving other stuff outside of rugby as well, because you get that satisfaction along the way then, and it can make it more manageable.
And what were some of your goals? Like, were you like, oh, I want to run this bit faster, or I want to get this bit stronger, just so people can get an idea of the kind of almost like increments that you were setting for yourself?
At the moment, or through injury?
Both.
Okay. Well, injury, it obviously depends on the injury, but it's funny because, especially as a professional athlete, you're kind of not really happy until you're back at full fitness and absolutely smashing it. But you really have to force yourself to enjoy the small victories. So in the early days, so my shoulder, for example, it was being able to lift my arm out straight without any pain. Like that was, and you have to be like, yes, that was awesome. I've got that point. And then what's next? And funnily enough, I've kind of eased off the, Mo mentioned this about being kind to yourself during this period and accepting what your limitations are. Again, that's similar to being injured. Accepting the limitations of your injury, same as accepting limitations of your circumstances now. So, you know, if you can't go into a gym, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to really improve your max squat or whatever it is you're trying to do. So I've been just kind of having fun with some of my aims, even with stupid stuff like trying to learn how to juggle with four tennis balls. And like when I managed to do that for a couple of seconds, I was like, yeah, that's improvement from when I started. And there's other stuff like I got sucked into the 5K thing, had a couple of goes at that before I realized it's really hard to run a sub 20-minute 5K, and kind of parked it for a bit. But I'm more just taking it in each session. So because I'm not necessarily doing a real consistency of training at the moment compared to what we normally do, which is quite regimented. If I go for a run or something now, I'll just set myself a little goal for that session. And then if I achieve that, then great. And I feel good about it. But it's not necessarily part of a big scheme of training. Because at the moment, we're kind of not really working towards anything specific. I guess for me, the long-term goal is Tokyo next year still, and hope to be in good shape for that. But there's a bit of time before we'll be playing any professional sevens anyway.
And is England, like Mo mentioned, I guess she's being sent that on the 15 side, but is England sending you any kind of fitness? Are you guys doing any fitness testing like Mo was saying they were doing on their side?
Well, we're all of our staff and all of our players are furloughed at the moment, so we're not working as such. But obviously, being active and training is just part of our lifestyles anyway, regardless of whether we're doing it for work. But we've got an amazing set of staff with England Sevens who go above and beyond to kind of look after us. So we feel very well supported by the Seven staff, even if we are a bit disconnected from the RFU at the moment. So yeah, we're pretty lucky in that respect. And also quite a few of us have been around the game for a while, and we kind of know the ins and outs of training, and you learn what you can get away with in terms of staying in shape and what you can't. But we're not doing any testing for a while. I think that would be a bit of a shock to the system when we finally do. I saw that the ladies were doing the 1200 test, and I tell you, it's not an enjoyable one.
Yeah. Oh gosh. And for those that are interested in kind of following in your footsteps and you know, trying to play at the highest level in England, is there a pathway for England Sevens for players to try to pursue?
So I think, as Mo kind of touched on, there's not like a formal pathway where you just like tick this off, and then tick this off. There's a range of routes that guys have taken into our squad currently, and that kind of shows that you can get into the squad, into that pro game through a range of routes. So you kind of have to work with what you've got and be aware of how you might be able to mold your situation. A couple of things that are really useful that Mo mentioned already, but getting involved in a sevens team that plays in an invitational tournaments, because one, they are so fun. Like those amateur sevens tournaments are some of the best times, and you meet amazing people and you learn a lot about the game. Obviously for youngsters playing at school, if your school does it, is brilliant. Some of the school competitions are great now. Obviously Roslyn Park didn't go ahead this year, but that's the kind of pinnacle. And there are also academies like UR7's Academy, which is a great way of getting towards the elite level of the game, and really pushing on. Because the way that players are scouted into the England Sevens squad, whilst it's not necessarily a visible formal structure, Players are scouted from schools, they're scouted for universities, from clubs, from academies. So the eyes are out there. As Mo said, it's about getting out there and not just playing your rugby, but enjoying it. And the nature of sevens is you got to work hard at it. If you want to be involved, you have to have that yearning for the hard work, both physically, but also, being able to commit to working on your different skills, both the ones you're good at and the ones you're not so good at.
And I'm just curious, when you were kind of playing, how did you know you wanted to focus on the sevens side of the game and not on 15s? When did you realize that?
Well, I guess when I was younger and at school and stuff, I didn't really know. I mean, I wanted to play for England, like a lot of guys growing up and girls growing up. I always enjoyed playing sevens at school because I just enjoyed running with the ball and I enjoyed the extra space. And it just felt a little bit less regimented than the 15s game. So I guess whilst I didn't recognize it, I always had a bit of a love for the game. And then the added elements of being professional in the game have kind of proved to be something I've really loved. So the traveling has been great. The fact that we get to work in quite a small group compared to 15 squads has been really rewarding. It's meant that I've been able to really form some amazing relationships with people and make some great friends. So I guess those are kind of some of the things that really made me fall in love with the game and still in love with the game.
Yeah, and that's actually perfect to transition to my next question, which is, obviously you had the experience of playing in the Olympics, which is just fantastic, but also the Commonwealth Games, and you've traveled all around on the circuit. What are some kind of key highlights that you've had or that stick out in your mind when you think back on your career to date?
Oh, that's tough. I guess, the Olympics is the obvious one. I'll try and go some less obvious ones. My debut was an amazing moment. I made my debut in Wellington in 2012 against the Cook Islands, actually, who are a smaller sevens playing nation. But I remember that really clearly as a brilliant moment where I really felt like I'd hit a milestone that no one could ever take away from me. That was a really proud moment. Another one was the first tournament I won in the World Series, which was in Tokyo in 2014. Because winning a World Series tournament is not something you necessarily think is going to happen for you. Even though we're in a great team with England, it's really hard to win a World Series tournament. So when it happened, it was just this massive sense of satisfaction and a bit of relief as well that I kind of hit that. And then there's been loads of off-field ones as well. I think I've been really proud to lead the England team, and both on the field, but also some of the things that I've been part of off the field. So like some stuff we've done with charities. We did Brave the Shave a few years ago for Macmillan Charity. That was an amazing kind of group effort. And then there's just some stuff recently, seeing some of the young guys develop, both in terms of their skill set as players, but also as people, and seeing them step up and kind of just occupy a bit more space in the world has been really rewarding for me.
And one thing that really was highlighted to me when I read, into your background was, you've been in so many positions of leadership, for England Sevens, for, Team GB, all these various positions. And do you have any advice for maybe captains or managers or players in positions of leadership or that want to be in a position of leadership? What are kind of what's the philosophy that you have towards leadership, and any kind of useful tips you can provide?
So I guess the number one I'd say is you have to learn how you as an individual are suited to leading. So, and there's no blueprint for this. I'd hate for people to be listening to this and think, oh, I'm going to try and lead like Tom Mitchell leads, because yes, like take some of the stuff if you find it useful that I do, but you have to find your own way, because ultimately leadership starts with you as a person. So, and there are loads of different techniques and little tricks of the trade you might use to lead, but ultimately, if you are excited, passionate, committed to what you're doing, that will rub off on other people, and that will be really positive. So that sounds kind of obvious, but that's really not something to be neglected when you're leading. And the other thing is know the guys you're leading. So spend time getting to know your teammates, off the field, really, because then that will help you lead better on the field. And I guess another point I'd say is don't be scared of making mistakes as a leader. You're much better off putting yourself out there and making the call when it needs to be made. And if it's wrong, you can hold your hands up and say, I got it wrong, but you'll learn from it. So don't be scared of making those mistakes.
And I'm just curious, during this time in lockdown, when you're not seeing all the other players physically, as captain or in a position of leadership, are you reaching out to players individually? Do you kind of check in on how they're doing? What are the things that you do as captain behind the scenes?
Yeah, so we're fortunate in our squad that there are a lot of guys who kind of take that role on, especially in terms of the social side of it. So I'm not kind of, there's part of me that feels like I should be ringing around every week and checking on everyone, but to some extent that'll probably be a bit artificial. We've had a couple of great moments where we had a couple of weeks where every Saturday someone would just like nominate someone else just to have a beer, and you just like cheers and get on to the next guy, which is probably not something that you'd say professional environment, but we're not in the professional environment right now. So but it's just nice to kind of connect, even if it's just little things like that. We've had a coffee club every week which has been set up by the Rugby Players Association, and it's just, again, really casual. You just tune in if you want to, and even just seeing the guys for a chat for 5 minutes is nice, because you just reinforce that connection that you've built over years of playing together.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I guess you touched on it when we were talking about the injury question, but just to leave people with maybe some tips or some things you're doing for life in lockdown. I mean, you talked a little bit about your approach to fitness. What about like diet, mental health? Are there things that you have done that you found to be successful that others could replicate?
Yeah, so I guess there are a couple of things I've tried to do on a weekly basis or a daily basis. One is kind of my like meditative practice, so doing meditation every day, which is something I've kind of gone up and down with over the last kind of 4 or 5 years since I was introduced to it. And it sounds a bit out there for a lot of people, but all it is really is kind of sitting and focusing on the breath or a mantra. And even if you just do it for 10 minutes a day, I find that over time that really helps to...
Do you use apps like Headspace or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I use Headspace. That's the one I use. And I love it. I think it's really good. It's also got some great sleep things like sleep music and sleep casts. So I recommend that app. Again, not being paid by Headspace to plug that. What else am I doing? I guess I'm like, the juggling one was a great example of just something just to do because it's fun, and there's no, I'm not gaining anything from that really, like tangibly, but it's just fun. I'm doing it. Being able to read more has been a great one for me. I've always been good at finding excuses not to read books. So I haven't had those excuses. So I kind of been forced to do it, which has been really good. Diet, I've kind of been like a bit relaxed with the diet, I guess, because training hasn't been as demanding. I've been mostly eating a plant-based diet, and I've kind of, again, been back and forth with this, and I've been playing around with that a bit more because I've not had the demands of training. So I've kind of had a bit more of a safety net around being able to change things with my diet without worrying about there being any issues. And I've actually found that really, really beneficial as well. So there's a few things in there people might want to try, but I think it's a time that if you're naturally not doing what you usually do, then don't be afraid to try some new stuff.
I think that's a perfect place to finish off. And where can people follow you? Where can they find you to get your content?
So Instagram's probably the best one, at TR Mitchell. And then Twitter, I am at TBobby Mitchell. So yeah, give me a shout. I really like connecting with people on Instagram. If you want to comment on posts, I'll reply. Or I usually try and reply to direct messages as well. But no promises on that one, but I do my best.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you in person soon.
Nice one. Enjoy the rest of the day. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Bye.